everybody, my name's Katie Rogers. I just wanted to come on and reintroduce myself because there's been a lot of new followers, but I've also been wanting to talk about childhood obesity and just like the struggles around that topic. I feel like there aren't a lot of safe places to go just to discuss that openly, and a lot of people struggle with that a lot more than we know and think about. And since that's something that I struggled with and is such a big part of my story, and you know, where I came from, who I am today, like, you know, where I've been, it's something that I feel really passionate about, but also something that's really near and dear to my heart. Like, it's really hard to talk about, and it's really hard to talk about openly with other people, but that's kind of what's aided, I think, a lot of the shame and guilt around this topic. Is just this like kind of idea that we shouldn't talk about it, or we don't need to talk about it, or hey, things will work itself out. I'm like, you know what, I totally agree that like things will work itself out, but when we take action, we just experience such a better life. We just experience so much joy and more fulfillment. So today what I want to do is talk to you guys about my experience and like what it was like for me growing up and being overweight. And I also took some time over the last couple weeks, actually. I've talked to my mom a lot about what her experience was like for her, like what her childhood was like, because she also struggled with obesity. It's like what her childhood was like, what it was like for her, and then what it was like with trying to help me through my challenges. And I know that there's a lot of moms, there's a lot of struggling moms and a lot of struggling girls out there who have struggled with you know, this idea that they have to be this like skinny, perfect size, and it's like society kind of shoves that in our mouth so often. And I really hope today that, you know, regardless of who you are, regardless of your story and where you've been, that something that I share today can speak to you. Something from my story can help you, and that can connect you and give you some good ideas for how to work through this, whether it's whether it's like your daughter that's going through these challenges, or whether it's you that had challenges with your mom when you were, you know, growing up. Regardless of what it is, yeah, I know that some of these tips can help you, and I've spent a lot of time putting them together and figuring out what I wish I would have known and what my mom wished she would have known as a mom raising a girl who was obese, and all of these things. So I'm going to start off just by sharing a little bit more about my story. Some of you guys may know parts of this, some of this stuff I haven't shared before. But between the ages of 8 and 10, it's right when I moved to America from Australia, and America's kind of food system was super different. There's a lot more processed foods, long story short. And I like had the hardest time. Like, as soon as I got here, I started gaining weight, and I think the biggest problem was just like, or the challenge for me, is just like looking around and you automatically start comparing yourself. And that's what I think we don't realize. Like, little girls, they start comparing themselves before we understand and before we know. Like, honestly, I'm pretty shocked when I look back and think about how young I was when I realized that my body was bigger than other girls. And it really took a big toll on me. And it's something that I like didn't really like to talk about. I didn't like to open up about it with my mom. But my mom knew that there was something going on, and she knew that I was struggling, not just physically, but emotionally as well. I think it affected me more emotionally than it did physically, if I'm being honest. But I automatically started coping with food and with the exact thing that my body was having a hard time digesting. So my mom, she kind of saw that my stomach began to be bloated. I was losing energy. I was just losing my personality. Like, because of all of the, you know, shame around that topic, I just gained weight, and I gained more and more weight, but I just like started to close off. I just like lost a little piece of who I was, and because I wasn't confident, I lost interest in soccer. Like, that's what I played, and I used to feel so good, and like when I was little, I was like, oh, I'm gonna be like an awesome soccer star. But when I gained weight, I was like, oh wait, I can't run as fast. I'm not good at this sport. Like, I'd look around and I'd see all the other girls that were super skinny, and I'd try to run really fast, I'd try to do all these things, but I just like wasn't working for me, you know. I just wasn't feeling good, wasn't feeling energized and strong. So I just kind of, honestly, I would say at a very young age, kind of fell into a little bit of depression, just because I wasn't feeling any sense of self-worth because I based it off of my weight. And that was between the ages of 8 and 10, like very, very young. I had that idea and that belief kind of engraved. just because of this idea of comparisons. So my mom, she was like such a saint and like helped me work through some of these things, and we went to doctors. But at that time, it wasn't, I mean, weight in general and just like problems with your gut and stuff, that's what I was dealing with. I was dealing with really heavy problems with my gut because of the food and because of stress that I had experienced as a child. Stress actually affects our gut health. We can't, digest food as well even to this day. If I'm super stressed out, I know my body is not going to digest food as well. But it was the same thing from when I was a little kid. So you go to all these doctors, and they're kind of like a little guru hippie, because like doctors and working with gut health, we weren't super popular back then. And then the ones that were, they were really expensive, and we just didn't have a lot of money. Like, we had just made this big move to America, so we're kind of sitting in this like zone where my mom and I are way confused about what to do. We know that I'm not feeling good. I've kind of lost a little piece of who I was. She had as well, and she was struggling with this topic just as much as I was, and we were both just trying to figure it out together. But the more doctors that we went to, the more it kind of scared me, and I didn't really understand what was happening. My mom and I actually, we started to drift, like very early on. Like, we started to drift, and I, from a young age, kind of resented her for the steps that she took to try and help me, just because at that point I didn't really understand. Like, it was really, really hard to understand, like, wait, is there something wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Why is this happening to me? What's going on? Like, did I do something wrong? And I just felt so just guilty and ashamed. I think we all feel that from times, for sure. So I was feeling these feelings, and I was like, okay, well, it kind of shut me off, I would say. Closed me off. I stopped hanging out with my friends, or if I did, I just like was in this negative zone myself. So I wasn't a good friend, and I lost a lot of friends, and I didn't really want to talk to my family, because in my family I felt like I was categorized as the obese one, and like overweight, and my whole family is very conscious of their health. And so I just felt like unworthy, I guess, to kind of interact with them. And the only thoughts that were going through my head all the time was like, oh, you're not worthy because you're not skinny enough. And I think that is something that's been projected in the world, and it's starting to change right now, which is awesome, but those thoughts are still there. I think that we're in the time zone where we're learning to work through them, but a lot of us still have those thoughts, especially at a young age, and those thoughts and those emotions stick with you. So that's kind of where I was after around like age 8 to 12. That's kind of like what was happening right before the teenage years and like all the craziness hit. But I want to give you a little recap of what my mom experienced and like her story, just to kind of like bring both of our stories together to help you get an understanding, and hopefully you can connect to a piece of this. So my mom, she also struggled with obesity at a young age. She had a lot of stress in her life, just a lot of traumatic experiences that also impacted her gut health. So she gained weight, I'd say, at around age 8, and struggled with it her whole life. So she kind of got into her teenage years and her, young adult years, and she's like, hey, I am focused, zoned in, I am going to get my health better. But because of the stress that she'd experienced and like some of those unresolved childhood traumas that she had, it made it really hard for her to reach her health goals, because there were all of these negative subconscious beliefs that were kind of stuck and trapped within her. So she would try to kind of envision this plan and like, work hard for all of her goals, and she's the most hardworking woman I've ever met. Like, she would try to do all these things, but because of all of these traumas, she wasn't able to do that. And so a lot of times those traumas that she had experienced were projected on me, and not purposefully. Like, this happens, and we do it all the time without noticing. Like, you have a bad day and you're automatically like pissed off at your husband, or a friend, whatever. So it's just kind of with those bigger events in life that are more traumatic, it's very natural for some of our fears, some of our insecurities to be projected on other people. And because her biggest fear was being overweight and like, having a kid go through her biggest fear and her biggest trial, she was like, what do I do? She's sitting there as a mom, like, how can I protect my kid from this? How can I like help my daughter work through this challenge that was so hard for me, and I don't want her to have to go through it? Like, what do I do? So she kind of talked to me a little bit and said that how she felt at that time was she didn't really know what to do. She didn't really know what to say, so she felt like she tiptoed around the topic, which I feel like that's what a lot of us do when we're dealing with this topic. Like if you have a young girl who's dealing with her weight, it's like, how do you talk to a little girl? Like how do you express, you know, what you want her to know without her, you know, becoming affected by it in a negative way? Because, you know, it's hard. Like how young can a child be before you start sharing some of this stuff with them? So these are some of the things I want to talk about today, help you know what you can talk to or say to your daughter if you're someone who's struggling with weight, or like kind of the traumas that come with being overweight as a young child, or like having a hard relationship with your mom and like working through some of those things. These are all things I want to talk about today and give you some tips and just strategies to work through them. So quick recap. So you've got my mom. She's seen me struggle and struggle with her biggest struggle as well. She's unsure about what to do, so she's tiptoeing around the topic, never really talks about it, but occasionally will be like, oh hey, like don't eat that, it's not good for you, like trying to help me, trying to take me to doctors, and then I'm sitting there like, I'm like, wait, something's wrong with me, I'm overweight, I understand that is happening, I'm feeling embarrassed, ashamed, guilty even, and just feeling just super down because of the experiences I was having at school. Just like, I mean, a lot of times when you're overweight, there's a lot of bullying that happens, and that's just super natural. So I don't feel safe going to school, but I also don't feel safe going home and talking about it. So I just close off and I shut down, and I lose kind of my sense of identity, my you know, my little girl. I just kind of shut down because my worth was based off of my weight, and I was feeling worthless. Just because I was overweight, and that's how I was basing my self-worth and value at that time. So this is gonna be the fun part. Get ready. I know this is kind of a long video, but stay tuned because we're getting to some of the tips and like the good strategies right now. I just wanted to help you guys understand what my story was, what my mom's story was, to get a good like recap and understanding of this big picture. So at this point, I'm not really on good, like back then I wasn't ever really on good terms with my mom. Our relationship struggled until I was probably out of high school. Like this is years of struggling, and a lot of people will look at that and be like, oh, you guys never figured it out. And the truth is, in the last couple of years, I feel like my relationship with my mom has gotten better than it ever was. And I look back at those experiences that happened when I was young, and I don't feel any shame, I don't feel guilty, I don't feel any negative emotions towards my mom. If you ask me how I feel about that whole experience and everything that happened, I would tell you that I'm so grateful that those things happened. I'm so grateful I struggled with weight. I'm so grateful I had to go through those times where I felt embarrassed because I couldn't run fast, or like I felt embarrassed because my stomach was bloated. Even those times where I'd be laying in bed at night and just crying because my stomach hurt or my head was hurting or I was dealing with these health challenges. I wouldn't trade any of those experiences for the world, because it's a part of who I am today. And it makes me who it's a part of who I am. It's a part of who I've become, and I'm so grateful for them, and I'm so grateful for my mom, and I love her to death, and I feel like our relationship is only getting better from here, because we took time to work through the challenges that we experienced. So I'm gonna start off by sharing some of my mom's tips. So I went back and I asked my mom, what are the top 3 tips you would recommend for a mom who's struggling with a daughter who is overweight or obese or has food allergies, just like any of these things that fall into those categories. So and I wrote them down because there's really, really good information. I didn't want to miss any of them. So she talked about not tiptoeing around the topic, which I thought, oh, like what a hard one, right? Because it's so true when your daughter's experiencing that. And I don't know, like I don't have any kids. I've done a lot of nannying, but that's as close as I've gotten. Like I don't understand what that trial would be like, and that's why I wanted to get her tips for all you moms out there. But she said that after she spent so many years tiptoeing around the topic, she said that it was really, really hard because she noticed in the long run that by her not kind of openly engaging in conversations with me about this topic, that's part of kind of what she thinks shut me down, or at least made me feel shut down and closed off. But the biggest thing, like I heard her say this tip, and I was like, wow. So I wanted to share it with you guys, just like word for word. But she said this. She said, look, your daughter is already having experiences with their weight at school with their peers. Like your daughter's already having those experiences. Like she already kind of gets a sense and a feel, even if it's just a slight little bit. Like she might be super young, right? but especially if they're older, like they're already having experiences at school where they don't feel safe, where they're bullied, where they're made fun of, or where they just feel ashamed. It doesn't even take any bullying or like negativity from other people for them to feel down on themselves, and I am proof of that 100%. Like, I was down on myself and upset with my weight before anybody else was. I noticed changes in my body before anybody else did, even at a young age, even at a very, very young age. So she said, what my mom said is, if they already feel like they have to close off at school, you have to make sure that they don't have to be closed off at home. Like, they're already having to keep this big secret and, like, you know, just like keep all of these hard emotions locked in with them, like all day at school when they go, or all the time with their peers. Like, they have these thoughts running like, oh, I'm overweight, I'm not good enough, or I'm bigger than my friends, I just want to feel confident, I just want to feel happy, I just want to feel skinny, right? They're already feeling some of these things because naturally it's just kind of what happens. We notice what our bodies look like. So they're already having experiences, they're already having to keep secrets at school, so make sure that they don't feel like that at home. And with me, I didn't really feel safe sharing or talking about my weight to anyone at home, and I didn't for years. And I think that's a big part of what made it really hard for me to overcome my struggles with being overweight for so long. It's just because I had kept everything so locked inside. But you might be thinking, okay, so how do I go about that? Like, how do I go about making my home a place where my daughter or my son even feels safe to talk about these things openly? And I love this super simple answer from my mom and what she like recommends. Like, hey, you know what? The first thing, like, your kid needs to know that you love them. In today's world, so many of us are on our phones. I'm such a, you know, like, I'm always on my phone. We're always on our phones. Like, we could be walking outside and we're on our phones. But take some time to put your phone and your technology and your computer away. Like, just give some 100% devoted attention to your kid, even if it's just for an hour or like 30 minutes, and just see the difference that it makes. Because regardless of what your kid is experiencing, you know, if they have a moment with you where they feel loved and like your attention is on them, and like, this is me coming from someone who went through that and like sharing how I would have felt like having more experiences like that. If I would have felt more connected to my mom and my dad, for that matter, and just had like one-on-one time, I think I would have felt a lot more safe opening up and just talking and communicating about the insecurities that I was feeling, and like the embarrassment I had felt at school, and even like some of the times that I would make fun of other people just because I was so insecure of my own body, like, and that was really, really hard. But all of these things I didn't feel like I could talk about. But if I had like 30 minutes with my mom, just like one-on-one time, even from a young age, I think would have been really, really important. That would have been a huge, huge, huge difference. So I'd say find a fun activity with your kid that they love to do and that you like to do too. Like, make it fun for both of you, because you don't both, like, if you're hating it, it's not going to be fun, and like, you're not going to be on your like best A game to like, you know, just like love and kind of embrace your daughter or son. So find something fun that you guys can do together, and see what happens. Like, you don't have to make this time a time where you're talking about heavy things. I think it's really important to have times with your kids where you're not just talking about heavy things. Like, make it a fun time before you even start talking about like weight or eating habits or yada yada yada, and I'll give you some tips about how to go about those conversations later. But like, step one, find solid amount of time where you can just have fun with your kid. Just have fun. Step number 2 from my mom, or tip number 2, is a big one. It's a big one. But she said you need to do a little self-check and leave your fears and your baggage at the door before you talk with your daughter. So if you're having a conversation with your daughter, your child, all of your fears and self-talk or like negative beliefs from when you were a child or just like your past, those can't come into the conversation, bottom line. Like, you can't bring in or project any of your fears on your daughter. Like, your daughter or son has a whole different experience, a whole different world. Like, own their story. Like, let them share their story, because this story, like, their story isn't about you right now. Like, this is about them 100%. I think just going in with that perspective takes a lot of the anxiety away of having that kind of intimate and like one-on-one personal conversation with your child about obesity without, I mean, it doesn't even have to, I wouldn't use the word obesity in a conversation like that, but like just about weight, just about health in general, and just the emotional challenges that go along with that. And step number 3, really quickly too, if you feel like you don't have a good kind of basis yourself of self-worth, or you feel like you're being held back by some of your challenges that you experienced as a kid, take time to go back, like look through the challenges that you experienced. If you feel like they're too heavy and like you can't have a good conversation, you don't feel comfortable, don't be afraid to go to counseling. Like I went to counseling for years, and my mom and I both worked through a lot of challenges that we had as kids, and with each other, and if it weren't for counseling, I don't think our relationship ever would have healed like the way that it has. So don't be afraid to go to counseling. And if you feel like maybe your like baggage or the stuff that you've been through isn't super heavy and it's like no biggie, but like kind of there and you're a little bit stressed out about it, just feel free to like reach out to a life coach. They're usually cheaper, and there's lots of people that can help. I'm always happy to help as well. So there's resources and there's tools to help you work through your challenges so that you can then help your daughter work through their challenges, or your son too. So step number 3, I really like this one because I totally resonate with it for sure. So like I said earlier, when I was struggling with weight, I kind of lost interest in a lot of activities. Like soccer, I lost interest in soccer because I felt overweight and not good enough to run, and I just I didn't feel good and fulfilled and passionate about what I was doing because I didn't feel good at it. So that kind of escalated the problem, I would say, but I wouldn't have traded that as well because it taught me to work hard. But what my mom said is she wished she would have found something that I was passionate about and something that I love and kind of experimented with me, so that I could have something that I always could go to feel passionate, to feel fulfilled, to feel loved, and just proud of myself. And I totally agree with that, 100% agree. I only ever started losing weight when I found something that I was so passionate about. Because it wasn't ever about weight, and usually weight loss isn't about the weight. It's usually about emotional connections behind those things, especially with young kids. If young kids are overweight, usually there's some emotional attachments behind that. So find something that's gonna bring positivity into their lives. Like just experiment, have fun with it. Like put them in some new sports. If they hate it, that's fine. Give them a 2-week trial period. And switch it up, and don't be afraid to do that because it's worth the upfront challenges that come with trying to figure out different activities and sports and stuff. Find friends that they can hang out with, just keep them busy, keep them actively engaged in good things and activities. And that would have helped. A lot of times I'd come home from school and I just like snack. I wouldn't stop eating all day. I was never full, but if I was distracted, every single time, I kid you not, if I had a good day, I'd come home and I'd eat a good dinner too, and I wouldn't look for those quick processed sugary foods, because my brain wasn't like, oh, I need a dopamine kick. Even as a kid, when you don't understand what sugar is doing to your brain, you just know how you feel, and your feelings and your thoughts are associated like, oh, sugar's gonna make me feel happier and better. And it's true, it totally does, but there's other things that can bring that fulfillment and that satisfaction that's like way stronger and way better. So experiment, find some things that your kid loves to do that keeps them active. Basketball, soccer, volleyball, yada yada yada. There's so many opportunities. And then lastly, just take some time to plan. Take some time to plan healthy meals, right? Processed foods, you go into the pantry and you're like, ooh, I want some fruit snacks. Or like, ooh, I want a granola bar. Like, ooh, I want chocolate. Right? Like kids will go and they'll grab whatever's there and whatever they see. So take some time in the beginning of the week or even end of the week, whatever, and meal prep healthy foods that they can grab really easily that are good to go. Otherwise they won't. And that's what my mom said, 100%. Like cuties, make them, like peel them and get them ready so that they can just grab them. Bananas, like puts them out on a tray, like they can grab them. If there's grapes out on the table, they can grab them, and they're going to grab that. And they're gonna love it, okay? But if it's something that they have to go and peel the cutie, it's super lazy tendencies, but it's super true. So if you have healthy snacks readily available for them to grab, they are gonna eat healthier, and you will as well. So make it a family thing. Make sure everyone's involved. Do this thing together. So those are the major and biggest tips that my mom said. So recap: first step, don't tiptoe around the topic. Don't be afraid to have open and honest conversations with your daughter. Talk to her about some of the struggles. Make sure that she knows it's not your fault. This is just something that you're experiencing. Like, it's okay. There's an easy solution to this. There's an easy solution to this. Like, it's okay that you're working through or like having these trials. Just remember, it's not your fault. Like, let's just work on this together. We're going to do this together so that you can feel healthier and stronger. You know, really just like really simple, easy conversations like that are focused around a positive message. Step number 2, do a self-check. Leave your baggage and your fears at the door. If you need to go to counseling or get a life coach to kind of help you manage some of these for like a couple weeks, totally do it. There's no shame around that. I attribute everything that I've been able to accomplish, I attribute to like all of the things I worked through in counseling. I'm forever grateful for my counselor. She just became a best friend with, you know, for me, and I'm just so grateful for her because I wouldn't be where I am without her, and she's a forever friend. Yeah, biggest tip, biggest helpful thing for me. So don't be afraid to do that. Step number 3, find something that your child is passionate about, something where they feel fulfilled, and make sure they feel loved and supported and encouraged. And just like the whole planning aspect. So now I want to share a few of my tips, and I'll make them super quick because I know this video is long. But if I was going to talk to someone who's in my shoes, but never had a chance to work through the struggles that they had as a kid, with being obese, or still struggling with feeling like guilty, or struggling with weight right now, or like had them, you know, struggles with their relationship with their mom growing up, just around the topics of food and weight and all that, I would tell her or him, just know that there's so much purpose in what we go through. There's so much purpose in what we go through. So I want to do a little exercise with you really quick. Okay, I want you to think about what you went through that was beyond challenging. What was the hardest thing that you went through in regard to weight, in regard to like food issues, food allergies, just like trials with this topic overall. And you can pause, take a minute to like think about it. And I want you to envision that in your mind, like allow your body to feel those like emotions, just like allow yourself to really feel what or how hard that was, and now I want you in your mind, okay, ready, I'm gonna do something, and this is gonna a little bit, maybe you're gonna be a little bit like ticked off about it, and it's so totally fine because it happened to me the first time too, but I'm gonna tell you, good, it's good that happened. It's freaking awesome that happened, and I'm so glad that it happened. I'm so glad that I went through those challenges. I'm so glad that I was overweight. I'm so glad that I had challenges with that. Doesn't matter if you believe it or not, but I want you to repeat these phrases in your mind. Good. That hard thing happened to me? Good. Awesome. Because guess what? Your brain's gonna start looking for reasons why that was good. Because what have you been able to learn through this? Like, what healthy habits have you been able to build that you totally wouldn't have built if you hadn't dealt with health challenges or food allergies or being overweight? For me, I have a stronger relationship with my mom than I probably would have had if I hadn't have gone through those things. Yes, it was more challenging in the time, but it's great because it's better now. So just remember, like, you have a bright future ahead. Like, you have so much going for you. You've been able to have an opportunity to learn amazing things. So remember that. Take advantage of those lessons that you've been able to learn, because they're going to push you so far. They're going to help you so much with your future kids, with your parents. Like, you know, take some time to heal, and if you're not feeling that yet, that's okay. Like, you can chat with me and we can do some one-on-one coaching, or if you wanted to, like, if you really feel like there's a lot of things that you need to work through that are really heavy and deep, feel free to reach out to a counselor, because that is what helps me the most. Step number 2, this is kind of a hard one too, but I think it's critical for all of us to take responsibility for who we are and where we are now. And by responsibility, I don't mean blame, right? When you think about blame is connected to whose fault it is. Blame is when you're like, it's her fault. Like, I could blame my mom for everything I went through. But even saying that makes me feel yuck. That makes me feel like bummed out and just gross. But if I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I'm gonna take responsibility for my life. Like, I'm gonna see what I can do from here and be like, you know what, some of those things happened, and it doesn't matter whose fault it is. What matters is that I'm committed to improving my life from here on out. So that's what responsibility is. So responsibility is focusing on your commitment, like your commitment to make your life better and improve your life from here. So it's a big one, and it takes time, but that has been so helpful for taking action and being able to accomplish what I want. And step number 3 is really simple and easy. Just like, be kind to yourself. Just know that you're so loved and that there's people out there that care about you and that are experiencing similar things. just like take time to love you, take time to connect with like who you are and rebuild your foundation, like rebuild your sense of self-worth. Take time to have good, real, raw, and honest conversations about the challenges that you've been through. If they're all locked in inside and they're deep down, like talk to me, let's get it out and let's work through that so that you can just connect to your truest self and the best version of you, because that is crucial, because you are so capable of so much. You're capable of the life that you want. Like you own that. You deserve the life that you want. You deserve that weight loss. You deserve the ability to feel confident with your food allergies. You deserve the ability to have all the financial freedom that you want. Like you deserve the best life possible. The best life possible. I always think about Oprah. Oprah has an amazing life. Like we deserve every ounce of goodness that Oprah's been able to experience. We deserve that too. It's just a matter of putting the work in and working through our challenges and like seeing what we want. Like if you want a life like Oprah's, awesome. Like what do you need to do to go get that, right? That's part of taking responsibility, but you have to work through your past traumas. You have to work through your challenges to be able to connect to your truest self to achieve the ultimate goal that you want and the highest version of yourself. So be kind, love yourself, and take time to heal. Take time to heal. And if you're at a loss for how to go about that, just reach out to me. You can DM me or find a coach to help you work through some of these challenges, because there's tools and there's support readily available for you so that you can get connected and get back on to your path to just your highest success and highest potential, because it's there and it's possible. So there's a lot more to my story, but we're hitting 30 minutes, so I'm going to tap out. But if you ever need to talk, I'm always here. I'm always just like a message away. If you want coaching, I'm always here as well. And I'd love to just jump on the phone and chat with you about your story and, see if this coaching program will work for you and see how I can help you and if I can help you. But more than anything, just know that like it's okay. It's okay to experience hard things. It helps us grow. So connect to that and like really lock in deep to that, because there's so much good in the world. There's so much good in the world. And you have the ability to connect to that. You have the ability. So super excited, super stoked. Message me if you have questions. This is a long one. But thank you everybody for staying tuned in. I'm looking forward to hearing more about your stories.